Hi, my name's Carla. I tried to do this presentation on Zoom, but my computer didn't have enough storage, so this is what I could come with. So I apologize if you can't see the screen correctly, but I did send you the presentation individually so you can look at it. But yeah, today I'll be discussing the temperate forest ecosystem and how it kind of just connects to every major ecological concept that we talked about this semester. Pretty much what the temperate forest is. We live in one. It's found also in the Eastern Northern America, Europe, Asia, Southern and South America. It has not too hot, not too low temperature, and it has pretty much high rainfall throughout the year. And it also has all seasons like spring, summer, winter, fall, just like us. All right, let's get started. We got the table of contents. Pretty much a description of every slide and every chapter. Kind of focuses on how each chapter connects to the temperate forest and every concept. Okay, so in chapter 1, the introduction of ecology, pretty much what is ecology? Ecology is the study of how organisms interact with each other and their environment. There's different levels of studies. So we got the individual, population, community, ecosystem, and biosphere. Different types of ecological research that was discussed in the topic was observation, which tracks tree growth and stuff. Experimentation, testing, like nutrients effects on plants, and then modeling, which predicts forest carbon storage. An example would be in the temperate forest, species like deers, owls, and even fungi interact across levels, shaping biodiversity and energy flow. Pretty much ecology is just all about interactions between organisms and their environment. And in the temperate forest, there's animals that all interact with each other in the ecosystem. All right, in chapter 2, we talked about the climate and terrestrial biomes. Biomes are defined by climate, which is like temperature and precipitation, and dominant plant communities. So a few drivers would be like sunlight and the Earth's tilt. In the temperate forest, they're found at mid-latitudes with moderate to high rainfalls and cold winters. Different type of soils. Soil layers would be the organic matter, topsoil, subsoil, and weathered rock. And how this chapter kind of relates to the temperate forest. It has seasonal climate drive, leaf drops, soil nutrient cycling, and biodiversity. Pretty much the tree influence local moisture and the temperature, creating microclimates for species like fungi, insects, and other plants. Yeah, kind of just like the temperate forest grows in regions with cold and decent rainfall. Their climates and soils support mix of tree species and drive seasonal changes like the leaf drops and nutrient cycling. So that's kind of the overall summary of chapter 2. All right, in chapter 3, we talked about the life in the water. The aquatic systems are shaped by water physical properties, circulation, and stratification. Water properties and climate roles, the high density heat capacity buffer climate. In the water cycle, we got the evaporation, precipitation runoff, which supports forest soils, moistures, and nutrient flow. Some freshwater ecosystems in the temperate forests would be streams and rivers, lakes and wetlands. The wetlands have high biodiversity, which helps control floodings and filter nutrients. And how it connects to the temperate forest. The forest filters runoff, which stabilizes stream banks and regulates temperature and light for the aquatic life. Pretty much the forest and the water ecosystem is based on environmental pressures. And streams and wetlands get filtered by forest soils, and leaf litter helps support aquatic food chains. All right. For chapter 4, we talked about the population genetics and natural selection. Um, Evolution occurs when alleles frequencies in a population change over time due to natural selection, genetic drift, or other mechanisms. Types of natural selections would be stabilizing, meaning favors average traits, directional, meaning favors one extreme, and disruptive, which favors both extremes and can lead to specifications. How this relates to the temperate forest. There's local adaptations in the forest species, like trees adapting to elevations or light. Beetles, owls, wildflowers may show genetic differences based on like sunny versus shaded areas. But yeah, pretty much the forest species evolve based on environmental pressures. It's kind of moral. Chapter 5, we talk about the temperature regulation, key concepts being the microclimates and thermal adaptations. Pretty much the overview would be organisms experience and adapt to microclimates. And then like the temperatures regulation is key for survival and reproduction. How this connects to the temperate forest, shady understories and varied terrain creates microclimates. Leaf litter and canopy covers moderate ground temperature, helping species like mooses in maintaining optimal body function. Yeah, temperature regulation. Forest microclimates like shaded areas also help the species regulate body temperature, and the canopy and leaf litter protect animals. All right, in chapter 6, we talk about water relations, the key concept being water balance in the organisms. Pretty much water is essential for all life. Organisms in different ecosystems maintain water balance via physiological and behavioral adaptations. And in the temperate forest, moderate rainfall support water availability, but plants still regulate water use to avoid loss. An example would be maple trees. In this photo, you can kind of see regulate water loss through control and leaf shedding in dry seasons. In chapter 7, we talked about the energy nutrient relations. Key concept would be the energy acquisition strategies. We got the autotroph plants, uses sunlight via photosynthesis, common in temperature forests. And then we got the heterotrophs, consume organic material, decomposers, recycle nutrients. And only about 2% of light reaches the forest floor. Understory plants adapt to low light. An example in the temperate forest would be trees using photosynthesis, decomposing leaf litter support nutrient cycle, and herbivores must forage efficiently due to seasonal food availability. All right, for chapter 8, we got social relations. Social interactions influence the reproductive success and survival, meaning that in the temperate forest, animal behaviors, especially those involving mating, territory, defense, or cooperation, are shaped by evolutionary forces like the sexual selection and parental investment. How this kind of relates to the temperate forest. An example would be like bird species. They kind of exhibit sexual dysmorphisms. Females may choose mates based on the bright plumage or complex songs, which here indicates good genes or territory quality. For chapter 9, we talked about the population distribution and abundance. And key environmental factors shape population patterns. Distribution and abundance in the temperate forest are influenced by the rainfalls, temperatures, competition, and species interactions. What's it called? Where and how species live depend on resources and environment. Small mammals are more densely packed, while large need more space. Chapter 10, population dynamics. Population size changes over time based on births, deaths, immigrations. How it relates to the temperate forest is populations in temperate forests like white-tailed deers or gray wolves shift seasonal resources availability and climate. Immigration, wolves may move into a new forest patch as prey become abundant. Immigrations, deers may leave areas with high predation and food storages. And deaths and births. Harsh winters increase mortality. Springs promote reproduction. Kind of when the population shifts with seasons, animals migrate or die off in the winter and increase again in the spring when food is available. For chapter 11, we talked about population growth. Population grows under ideal conditions, but logistic growths occur when resources are limited. All right. We got population growing fast when there are no limits, like when wolves are removed, but eventually food and space slow growth. In chapter 12, life history traits are adaptations that influence an organism's reproduction, survival, number of size of offsprings, and age of maturity. Trade-offs occur between survival, reproduction, and growth. How this relates to the temperate forest, plants like animal species exhibit diverse life history strategies shaped by seasonal changes and environmental stability. For chapter 13, we got species interactions and competition. Competition arises when organisms use the same limited resources like food, light, space, and nutrients. We got intraspecific, which is within the species, and interspecific, which is between the species, and this can affect survival, growth, reproduction, and species distribution. In the temperate forest, plants and animals compete intensely due to seasonal resources limitation. For chapter 14, exploitation involves an organism's benefiting at the expense of another, which includes herbivory, eating plants, killing prey, or living off a host. In the temperate forest, white-tailed deers feed on seedlings, acorns, and shrubs. Gray wolves prey on deer and small animals. And ticks and parasite worms affect deers and rodents. For chapter 15, mutualism, which is a symbolic relationship where both species benefit and enhance survival, reproduction, or resources use. It kind of just helps both species, like hummingbirds pollinate flowers. Underground fungi help trees absorb nutrients and get sugar in return. So it kind of just one thing helps another, kind of. In chapter 16, we talked about species abundance and diversity. Key concept being environmental complexity and species diversity. Diverse forest supports more species. The layered structures like canopy, shrubs, and floors create many habits for birds, insects, and plants. An example will be several warbler species can coexist in application to the temperate forest due to variations of slope, elevation, and canopy structures. In chapter 17, we got the interactions and community structure. Key concept would be strong interactions and keystone species. through mutualism and trophic cascades, certain species have a significant impact on community structure, even when it's small biomass or abundance. What's it called? Some species have huge impacts, while others doesn't. But wolves shape plant communities through, through predation, and fungi help trees grow by sharing nutrients. Chapter 18, we got the primary and secondary production. Primary production, autotrophs, drives energy flow and productivity, which in turn affects the energy available in the higher trophic levels. Seasonal sunlight, rainfalls contribute to the moderate to high primary production. Energy flows from producers like trees and herbivores like deers. Sunlight and rain also helps drive energy through the food web. In chapter 19, we got nutrient cycling and retention. Effective cycling and retention of nutrients such as carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus, and essential for ecosystem stability and productivity. Trees and fungi consume phosphorus, which is derived from weathered rock and is stored in soil and leaf litter. Rodents like deers are an example of animals that disturb soil, which improves the nitrogen cycling. Okay, chapter 20, we got succession and stability, which is how ecosystems recover and rebuild after a disturbance. An example would be like fires, storms, triggering secondary successions, fast-growing plants, shrubs, mature trees. Recovery is quicker due to existing soil seed banks and nearby vegetations. We got 3 models. We got facilitation, which meaning early species help others grow. Tolerance, species survive without help. And inhibition, early species block others until disturbed. For chapter 21, we learned about landscape ecology, the size, form, and connections of the patches that make ecosystems important. An example would be like animal mobility is restricted from fragmentations. Pretty much that. Smaller patches allow rodents to go farther, and interconnected area butterfly growth, and beavers create dams that change the landscape. Some examples. In chapter 22, we got geographic ecology. Species richness increase with area connectivity. Bigger, more connected forests support more biodiversity. When forests are broken up, species decline. Wildlife helps reserve this. In chapter 23, we got the global ecology and climate change. Global connections, such as Earth's ecosystems, are all linked. Land, air, earth, ocean. Greenhouse gases trap heat, which regulates Earth's temp. And we got about 70% of light is absorbed and 30% reflected back to space. Some climate changes and impacts. Species in the temperate forest shift north or upward, and more rainfalls equals erosions and nutrient loss in forest soil. All right, so we got some human impact on the temperate forest. Some real life examples will be deforestation for agriculture, urban development, and logging. Forest fragmentations affecting animal migration and plant pollination. Here I kind of listed some examples. We got a documentary clip and an article here that I referenced eventually, which kind of talks about the importance of trees and it's not just our environment, but for our health and for our future. And the article kind of just breaks down how the temperate forest helps fight climate changes, and stuff like that. Cultural and economic values of the temperate forest. We got contributions economically would be timber, maple syrup, and mushroom harvesting, tourisms, national and state parks like Great Smoky Mountains, some cultural relevance, forests as spiritual or historical sites for many cultures, and stuff like that. Conservations and threats to the temperate forest. Some current threats would be climate change altering tree species, composition and growing seasons. We got air pollution, damaging the soils, and some conservation of efforts, rainforestations and afforestation projects, and some organizations. And these are my references. And we did it. We're done. Thank you for your time.